beautiful thing when it works smoothly. Okay. Good morning. We're at the Berrien County Personnel and Human Services Committee meeting being held virtually because of COVID-19. The meeting is called to order, and now we will have a roll call. Chickering.
Here.
Ballrath.
Here.
Hi, Dave.
Freeling.
Hi, Bill.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 members present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item of business, please.
I'm sorry, Bill, I cut you off. What'd you say?
If you'd introduce our first item of business.
Certainly. So the first resolution is B 2007304, and that's the CARES Act funding.
Great. Thank you. By way of introduction, we all know this, but last week, Brian reported on filing for the CARES Act funding that the legislature has specifically identified as being limited to law enforcement, which law enforcement is very critical in this, but I think we all were a little bit shocked to learn that other frontline service providers, primarily in our case, the health department, were not so similarly included for payment of hazardous duty pay. Brian has put together an excellent resolution for us to consider here in PHSC for moving on to the Board of Commissioners, hopefully tomorrow. So this would be our opportunity to discuss that in this committee before amendment or approval and moved on tomorrow. So Terry, Dave, you got any thoughts?
Bill,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Freeling. I agree that we should be able to be flexible with regards to how that hazard pay is being distributed. So I appreciate you asking that be drafted, and I'm comfortable with us requesting that from the state.
Okay. Dave?
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Bill.
Okay.
It's
Good.
hard to pay some when they're all out there fighting in the same battles.
Right, right. Just so you guys know, I raised the question to Brian, and I'll be interested in his comments in a second. That the way it's drafted, it is not quite as focused on essential services or frontline services type people. I mean, it's much more broadly worded. And my concern was that it may be to the public appearing to be overreaching if it was including building and grounds and parks and the courthouse and things like that really have had no firsthand contact. So, Brian, you give us your wisdom, please.
So, members of the committee, just as background information, about 2 weeks ago, we put together our hazard pay application via the CARES Act. Just so the group is completely familiar with the numbers, we saw 74,000 for law enforcement officers, 29,000 for 911 operators, and then approximately 57,000 for a local unit of government corrections officers. We saw every dollar possible under the allowance of the CARES Act. Now, do we agree that that everyone is being adequately compensated? No. Health department is obviously frontline. And earlier today, Commissioner Chickering and I were actually emailing back and forth about animal control. We've got a couple of dog handlers that were being tested earlier this week for COVID-19 out of concern for possible immediate contact with sick individuals. So with that said, the argument that I've made to staff is, without a doubt, if we are successful in this hazard pay premium, that we are leaving a group of people essentially behind. But that is the way the legislation currently reads. I think it's a good idea to bring forth a resolution asking the state legislature to consider an amendment. If this group wants to focus that resolution to specifically say which departments you think are the most appropriately named, that's fine with me. I will note that number one, I did very little work on this, and Annette did all the heavy lifting. And number two, she actually did that heavy lifting back in March when the full Board of Commissioners in March of 2020 put together a similar resolution asking the state legislature to consider all of your staff for CARES Act funding. So with that said, you're essentially restating something that the board already stated, and I think it's an appropriate thing to state. It appears that there's another round of stimulus funding coming, and getting into the ear of the Michigan legislature is a good idea.
Great. Thank you, Brian. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, sorry, sir, that was kind of a long-winded response, but please continue.
No. So Terry, Dave, give me your wisdom on maybe trying to focus this a little better, or are we better keeping it broad and then, allowing the discussion with the legislature to try to focus it if it needs to be focused?
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Fraley. I think right now, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was actually one of the things when I read it last night that did stick out to me, that we were not really specific with regards to those areas. I half wonder if the other committees will have some input as well, and it can be something that can be discussed with the full board. But I do agree with our administrator that it may need to be a broader brushstroke at this point in time.
Okay, great. I think that's good. Well said, Terry. Dave?
Yeah, I'd like to keep it broad for now, I think, until we, just let them know that we're not happy with the way they've got it set up now, and I wouldn't be too specific in how we're going to designate it at this point.
Okay. I think that's good counsel. Brian, if it's all right with my other committee members and their assistants, good morning. You got a helper, Dave.
Yeah.
That we keep it as it's written right now, and we will propose that as a resolution coming from PHSC to the full board tomorrow. Everybody agreed?
Agreed.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Commissioner Chickering, this is Shelley, if I may.
Yes,
I think the broad approach is much better than a very narrow approach. Don't forget that maintenance staff had to build a lot of things for COVID, such as stands for our hand sanitizing dispensers, the plexiglass divisions for safety. And then also remember that you have custodians who had far more cleaning responsibilities in the age of COVID too. I know you don't think about custodians, but for the people that were allowed in the building, there were enhanced cleaning things that needed to happen. And then you had IS folks who had to go around and arrange Zoom meetings so that business could still take place. So it really is the best approach to have the broad stroke. I don't know if we'll be successful with the state, but I'd rather ask for more and be told no than be asked for a very narrow scope, get it, and then have to go back to the pot again.
okay. Shelley, I think that's well said. There's lots of folks that contributed to this. My fear is that the legislature is looking at quote unquote first responders, not all of the people that support those first responders. But I think right now the important point is to say, hey, you left a lot of critical people out. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's have the dialogue. Hopefully we can maybe get a little bit of media coverage about the people who've been slighted here and make some progress, because sometimes Lansing doesn't listen like we'd like them to. So, great, thank you.
Make a little noise.
So your next matter of discussion is resolution, P 2007-300, and that's the front of the court complement change. Tom Watson, the front of the court director, is here in the room with us.
Great.
Morning, Commissioners. I certainly appreciate the opportunity to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart and something that we've been working on for quite a few months here. I know that I believe all of you have received a packet of information, and it certainly was not meant to inundate you totally, but wanted to provide the information so that you had an opportunity to digest it and then have the conversation that we're having this morning. By way of, I guess, just summarization, back in January of this year, I was notified by our then enforcement supervisor, Mike Slater. Mike Slater, a longtime employee of the county, 25-year member of the front of the court, notified me that he was retiring in May. Upon that notification, we, as well as every other department, certainly in the court, and I would submit within the county, took the opportunity to take a step back, take a look at our operations, determine exactly how we were doing business, to take a look and see if there was a way that we could be more efficient and still provide the services that are necessary to the clientele of our office. Upon doing that, we came up with a plan, and that is what is documented in the decision paper that was provided to you. And that plan summarily takes out, if you will, one of our current supervisors, and that is the supervisor that retired, Mr. Slater, in May of 2020. We had a lot of input. I did a lot of work in taking a look at other setups around the state, other counties that are similar in size to Berrien County, the similarity of functions that we have within accounting or our financial area, and also in our enforcement area. Those two areas have a lot of similarities, and it was the reason and the thrust that actually we decided to go ahead and take a look at this in the manner that we did. So, what we've come up with, and that's part of the resolution, and as I said, the information is in the decision paper, we are proposing to eliminate one supervisory position and to have our current accounting supervisor become our new financial services supervisor. That particular position would supervise our enforcement division as well as our accounting division. We go further than that, however. At the current time, we have 6 FTEs, full-time equivalents, in our enforcement division as well as in our accounting division. Those 6 FTEs service the caseload that we have within the front of the court here in Berrien County. In our enforcement division, we have an individual, I believe, that, speaking of the supervision aspect now, an individual that I believe was an excellent hire back in July of 2019. That individual is Debbie Withers. Debbie is our current accounting division supervisor. She has brought an awful lot to the front of the court. We had a lot of problems upon her arrival in our accounting area, upon the exit of our former supervisor in that division, with morale, with incentive, with initiative on behalf of the staff. Ms. Withers has done an excellent job and has basically taken the pendulum from one side to the other in that particular division. very impressed with the work that she has done, as is the judges, I might add, and our judicial council in the trial court. We propose that Debbie would become the financial services supervisor over the enforcement division, as well as I said, our accounting area. Then, as I mentioned, we go further. We are proposing, by the elimination of the one supervisory position, that we would add an assistant supervisor in our enforcement division, as well as adding an intergovernmental specialist. If I might stop for just a moment in the intergovernmental area, given the position of Berrien County as a border county in the state of Michigan, we have a huge amount, and I can't underscore that enough. Many of our clients are very mobile. We have individuals that move to the state of Indiana. They move to surrounding states, etc. There is an awful lot of knowledge that is required upon those movements that take place. And the reason I mention that is because there are issues relative to different states and their particular laws and court rules, etc. It's all governed under a uniform act, under the Uniform Interstate Child Support Act. However, a lot of knowledge is necessary in that area. Right now, we have been handling that in a, I would call it a generalist type approach, whereby every individual in our accounting and our enforcement area has a little bit of knowledge, but not a lot of knowledge in that particular area. Many other counties in the state, other friends of the court in the state, have separate divisions that are intergovernmental in nature, individuals that head up a particular area such as that. I think it demands that we need to have additional knowledge, given the fact that I don't see that portion of the caseload going down. So, the proposal of the two additions is the, as I mentioned, the intergovernmental specialist FTE. We also propose adding the enforcement division assistant supervisor. On the financial side, we have an individual that has been with us 28 years. She started with us as a co-op student when she was in high school. Her 28-year career has been in the financial area in our accounting division. Very knowledgeable individual. She has been our lead account clerk for many, many years, and we are proposing that her particular position would be reclassified and she would become our accounting assistant supervisor. So the assistant supervisor in accounting, the assistant supervisor position, which is a new position we're proposing that would need to be posted in the enforcement division, the intergovernmental position that I just spoke about, which also is a new position and would need to be posted. And then the funding of those positions is based on the elimination of the one supervisory position that I mentioned, our enforcement supervisor. All of that is documented in the decision paper. I won't go through all of that as far as the grade and step placements are concerned. I think you have that information. Certainly, if you have questions regarding that, I am happy and certainly here to go ahead and address those.
Great. Thank you, Tom. I've got a couple of questions, and then I want to have Terry and Dave weigh in as well. Let me say from the start, Tom, you and your organization is one of the best that we have here in Berrien County. And I don't think anybody on the Board of Commissioners, certainly not myself, want to do anything that prevents you from moving your organization forward and continuing the excellence that you've shown. So it has nothing to do with that. I trust your judgment in this implicitly. However, excuse the however, as I look at this, essentially what you've done is you've created a don't worry about titles. I'm just going to talk about hierarchy, if you will. You've created a leader of two organizations that you're putting under that leader, the new position. You are taking the roles that currently lead those organizations and sliding them over, same grade, same everything, to still lead those independent organizations. The lead accounting clerk goes, the intergovernmental specialist sounds great to me, but all of this from a head count perspective falls to the elimination of one court investigator and one accounting clerk, two worker bees to give us one management person. And that's a hierarchy issue for me. Okay? So I guess the first question I've got for you after my little speech here is you're eliminating one person on each side of this house who actually does work as opposed to leadership. Is that okay? Are you going to still be able to get all the work done?
Well, I can certainly, and I certainly appreciate your question, Commissioner, and I certainly understand where you're coming from. On the surface, clearly, I can see where those questions would come from. Let me dive into that, however, a little bit deeper. Both of these positions, when I talked about the proposed new position of the assistant supervisor in the enforcement area and the intergovernmental specialist, it is not lost on me that we need to go ahead and make sure that there is using your words, the worker bee situation has to maintain itself. Both of these positions envision that there is a portion of the caseload that would be carried by these two new positions. For example, let me talk about the intergovernmental position. We have, at this point in time, I don't have exact numbers for you, but at this point in time, we have well over probably 15% of our caseload that we would classify as intergovernmental. The intergovernmental specialist would then carry, we have, by the way, right now, just for your information, we have 16,000 cases in the Berrien County in front of the court. Now, thankfully, they're not all active at one time. If they were all active, I'm very thankful that the windows don't open in the courthouse because I'd have people trying to exit the building probably.
Yeah.
But in any event, we have over 1,500 cases right now that would easily be classified as intergovernmental. The intergovernmental specialists, given that they would be the resource that would be for the enforcement division and also for our financial services, accounting division, that intergovernmental specialist is intended to be a worker bee and is intended to carry a portion of that caseload so that the remaining individuals are not going to have additional cases. They're going to have those cases offloaded, if you will, so that the intergovernmental specialist would be responsible for those particular cases. So, as I said, on the surface, you can look at it and you can say, well, gosh, are we going management heavy here based upon what is being proposed? I want to assure you that that is not the case. We've had long conversations about that, and that really in the enforcement division, I really wind up with one additional individual that would be a line level individual. As I mentioned, the assistant supervisor, both in accounting and both in enforcement, as our lead account clerk does right now. She maintains a caseload at the current time. The premise that I have is that the assistant supervisor in the enforcement division certainly would do the same thing.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tom. Terry, Dave, you got questions?
No, I don't have any questions. My concern would be, like you say, if we get management heavy and then all of a sudden the work's getting behind because it wasn't, it was getting too much for those who were left doing the work. But if they're comfortable in that setup and won't be coming to us in 6 months saying they need more people, I'm okay. I don't have any other questions.
Great, thank you. Terry?
Um, so looking at this, I had a couple of questions when this first came to us last week. One of my questions was the process of how friend of the courts actually's parent committee is admin. Has admin had an opportunity to look at this? And what is our process and what type of feedback do we receive? This is more than just, eliminating one position or changing its classification. This is a true restructuring. And just want to make certain that everybody has had the opportunity to look at it, to vet it. Bill, you know that I have similar reservations with regards to going into 2021 and 2022 for budgetary. We have a salary survey that is wrapping up, and this is reclassifying a department in a way that we hadn't really had it classified when we went into the salary survey. And what I don't want to have is us having to go back and rework all of this. I want to just make sure that we do it right, I guess is what I'm saying here. And Tom, I know that what you do there with the Friends of the Court is fantastic. And I would echo the words of our chairman that you do a fantastic job. So our questions are merely just budgetarily making certain that this is the right move all across the board.
Thank you, Terry.
So I go back to what my point was. What is our process?
Okay. Yeah, Shelley, maybe you can address
Yep.
that.
Sure. In a perfect world without COVID, Tom would have gone physically to admin, presented this whole procedure, this whole process request, and then gotten its blessing, brought that forward to PHSC. We don't live in a perfect COVID-free world anymore. So with limited meetings, this has been going, Tom and I have been working on this in concert with Bill Wolf at the time, and now obviously with Brian, to hone job descriptions, to determine grade levels and that type of thing. I believe that it'll be easy to slide into the salary survey when and if that is ever implemented based on job descriptions and things like that. There was a significant amount of time spent on this proposal. As far as budgetary concerns, this proposal actually saves money due to the elimination of the supervisory position. So I think that addresses that concern. I believe Commissioner Curran, as the chairman of admin, has been made aware of this situation. I believe, is he on the call, Annette?
He is on here right
Okay.
now. He's got his video and his audio muted. That's why you can't see him, but he is in the meeting.
Okay, so nothing
Maybe-
was done in a vacuum.
Okay, maybe we'll let Jim weigh in on a minute. I've got a question and get your input, Shelley, on a couple of points. We didn't eliminate any supervisory position.
Yes, we did.
Excuse
We
me,
are
Shelley,
eliminating.
Shelley, can I talk for a minute? We retitled the jobs. They're graded exactly the same as they were before. There is no savings. You still have 2 grade 9 people there, and they're called assistant now rather than supervisor. That's a fact. Okay. The second thing is I'm interested when you say that this is consistent with the coming salary survey, because I think Terry's right. Have you looked at Mark's matrix thing to see where these jobs would all fall in the new system?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and they grade out the way they are now.
Well, there's totally different grades. So to say that the dollar value is going to be the same as what this proposal says, no, it'll be different. But yes, I know where they'll fit in the salary survey based on job descriptions, minimum requirements, and similar positions, how Mark has them graded. So I think we have a plan going forward when and if that salary survey is implemented. And Commissioner, if I could just, and it may just be a different way of looking at it, but the lead account clerk and the court investigator positions that are going to be eliminated are really transitioning 2 current positions to the new assistant positions. The accounting supervisor and the court investigator supervisor are transitioning to the new financial services supervisor. So there is an elimination of the court investigator supervisor position.
Well, yeah, but it pops up on the new org chart as assistant supervisor of enforcement at grade 9, which is exactly the grade it's at now. My point is, and I apologize right up front. I come from corporate America, so I am very familiar with hierarchies and bureaucracies and inefficiencies and all of those synonymous terms. They are from a grading level and supervisory accountability for the people below them exactly the same as they are now. The change comes that they have a manager level person over them. That's the only issue, Shelley, and I don't want to make it a big issue, but I think it's something that needs to be recognized. And Tom is telling us this is a better way to work. And to me, that's kind of the end of the discussion.
Commissioner, if I might, just and maybe it provides clarity also. I think all of you have the resolution that is proposed that Annette referenced just a minute ago. That resolution, if you take a glance at that resolution, if you take a look at the positions that we have currently, and that's on the left-hand side of the document, there are 5 individuals that are listed there. You'll note that on the right side of the document, we have 4 individuals. So there truly is the elimination of a manager level position. The elimination of that manager level position allowed us the flexibility to then grade the 4 individuals that are being added, if you will, in the resolution. That's where our flexibility comes from, and as Shelley indicated, it does truly save the county dollars going forward into now, obviously, and into the new year.
But the fact remains, if you look at the entire organizational structure, you are eliminating 1 accounting clerk. You're going from 6 to 5. You're eliminating 1 court investigator. You're going from 6 to 5.
Correct.
So the macro of the organization, we're eliminating folks at the bottom and adding 1 at the top. But Tom, if you're telling us we're going to be a better county and we're going to be a better friend of court with this structure, you got my 100% support.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
on the same thread of discussion on cost savings, when we're discussing these, are the savings is based on the grade increase at the step that they currently are, or are they coming in at a different step than what they currently are in their current position?
Great question.
Yeah. What this proposal does, Commissioner, what the proposal does is it affords an individual a 5% increase. What happens is that from the position that they're currently in, many of these, or some of these individuals, like for example, our lead account clerk, she moves from her current grade level to a different grade level. Now that grade level that we're proposing, the grade 9 level in this case, is at step one, because the step one, even though that's a very low step on grade 9, it affords her that increase from the current step level that she is in the grade level 7. So I know there was, I think, a question about that. How can a 28-year employee possibly come into a position at the initial step? That's how, based upon the fact that that particular dollar amount affords her that increase.
And commissioners, just to add also, Tom is following the promotional policy in that these are the minimum increases for promotions. No one is receiving more than that minimum required promotional increase.
Correct.
Dave, Terry,
you.
anything else?
No, I have nothing, Bill.
Jim, you want to comment?
Well, I guess the only thing I would say is one of the reasons why I asked to be invited to attend this meeting is so that I could hear the discussion. Unless Tom can refresh my memory, I have no recollection of this being proposed to admin. That's why I wanted to hear the discussion here today.
And have you thoughts on that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So just in the last week, as I've gotten up and running, I've been working with the net, working with staff to re-engage the various committees. So today we've got personnel, this afternoon we've got the admin committee meeting, tomorrow finance, and you'll see more and more of the committees resuming their normal schedules over the coming weeks. If this committee feels that admin should be consulted on it, it would be relatively simple to just ask Tom to come back for the 1 o'clock meeting.
Well, I thank you, Brian, and I appreciate Tom being willing to talk to all the committees. I guess I'd leave that to Jim. If he would like his committee to hear about this, then I think that's appropriate. I think that in terms of moving the motion forward, I'm very comfortable with personnel being the organization that moves the resolution. Jim?
I would be fine with, if Tom has the time to at least address it during our committee meeting at 1 o'clock today. After hearing the discussion and your intentions of moving this forward, I think for an informational standpoint, that if admin is brought up to speed on this, that they would probably get behind it as well. So if Tom has an opportunity at 1 o'clock and could at least address it with us, that'd be great.
Tom, are you available?
Commissioner, I'll make myself available and be right here in this seat at 1 o'clock.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
And Tom, thank you for all your patience.
I appreciate the opportunity. I know obviously this is something that takes time to digest, and I've had the opportunity, and I know you have not, to work on this for quite some time. But again, this is not anything we're pulling out of just pulling out of space. This has a lot of merit, I think, and I think it's going to serve not only the court, it's going to serve the citizens that we service well into the future in this capacity.
Great. Any other comments from my fellow commissioners?
Good.
Good. Thank you, Tom. Really appreciate your time as always.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to ask if Annette could forward the email that contains the complement change. It's contained within the email I received inviting me to this meeting, but the other 3 admin members are not going to have a clue that this is coming up at 1 o'clock. I'd kind of like to get some information to them before that. So if they have the opportunity to review it, they can.
Good idea.
Possible.
Yes, I can do that.
Thank you, Annette. Appreciate it.
Great.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you for the dialogue, everybody. Annette, we're gonna approve resolutions in a group, not individually, aren't we?
So I didn't realize that you guys, or I didn't, or think that you would be doing motions for each one of these, but I guess I just kind of felt like as we sort of have been doing them in the past, if I can get your concurrence, then they would move forward to the full board for tomorrow. But if you wanted to wait until we made sure that admin was completely okay with it, we could do that for this one.
Well, why don't we try it this way, that personnel has approved and is moving it forward unless admin wants to call a timeout. And then it'll be on their motion.
Perfect.
Fair enough,
Okay.
Brian?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Great, great. Thank you, Tom.
So your next discussion item is resolution P 2007-297, and that's a complement change within the equalization department. Warren is not here, so Warren, if you can make yourself available, audio and video, that'd be great. Or at least audio.
I don't have a camera set up, but is my audio coming through okay?
Yep.
Great.
Good, okay. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Thank you for hearing me today. We currently have a vacancy in the equalization department of a data coordinator position. This happened as a result of me moving into the director position, and Katie, who had been a long time occupant of the data coordinator position, has now replaced me as deputy director. I think she's going to do a fantastic job. She was doing data coordinator for over 15 years, and it's something I'm really pleased to move forward with. So the issue being is now we have this vacant position that had become rather specialized with her in it for so long. And really the things that we need this position for are already described under our existing job description of appraiser. And it would actually be, I think, a better fit to have it be converted to an appraiser position, just workflow wise. But the main reason is because the data coordinator position requires an assessor certification and starts at a grade 6, with the potential to advance to grade 8 with an advanced assessor certification. And Shelley, please feel free to chime in here if I'm misstating anything, but the appraiser position could potentially start at a grade 4 as an uncertified position. And ideally, that's how I would like to advertise the position, start at something more entry level. I think that's going to expand our recruitment potential. I think we're going to have a really hard time finding somebody that holds a certification that could otherwise go out, sign their own assessment role, and have a significant more earning potential. Come in and be our data coordinator. So I think from a recruitment point of view, we'd be better off with an appraiser, and from a cost savings point of view, we could likely hire somebody at a 4 rather than a 6 or an 8. That said, what I'm asking for in the resolution is the maximum at an 8 on the 1 in a million chance that we have a rock star applicant come in with an advanced certification and they have all of the credentials. I don't anticipate that happening. I think it's far more likely that we're going to have a certified person come into this position. The other benefit is just more latitude in the department for cross training. We would have at this point 5 appraisers and a deputy and myself. So that would open up the possibility for just dynamic work assignments and better cross training. So I think it's a good sell all around. I don't see, or I'm not able to think of any drawbacks. I think it's a win on every category. And unless there's any questions, I don't really have anything else to to say. This wouldn't affect any existing county employee, this change. So it's not like we're uprooting any institutional, established things.
Okay, good. I have just one question, really. Shelley, these are union positions, right?
That's correct.
So are we going to have any union ramifications by eliminating one job and adding another job and that kind of stuff? Or is the union going to be cooperative on this?
I don't anticipate any issues since the position that is being eliminated is currently vacant. So it does not affect a current union member, and we're keeping the number of positions the same. So in essence, they're not losing the bargaining unit is not losing a position. It's just changing to an already existing title.
Okay, that's great. Okay.
Can
Terry,
I comment on that?
Oh, Warren, you want to say something?
Sorry, I just wanted to mention as well that as far as the existing staff, the appraisers that we have, I've gotten a wink and a nod from that, this isn't something that they would feel like, anyone's moving in on their territory, so to speak. So I
Okay.
just wanted to offer that as well.
Wink and a nod is good until the union rep has to sign off on it, but
Fair enough.
I'm sure Shelley's the magician on these things, and between you and Shelley, this will be just a great thing for the union. Terry, Dave, questions?
It looks fair to me. I'm good.
I feel like this is a really good opportunity with it being vacant to really take a hard look and restructure if need be. And I think with the budget guidance for 2021 coming up, this is the time to do it. So thank you, Warren, for your explanation.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so I guess Warren and Shelley, we can take that as unanimous support from PHSC on this resolution.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. So the next, thanks Warren. The next discussion is 3 resolutions from the Health Department. Nikki Britton is on with us. And so that's going to be P2007291, 302, and 303. Nikki?
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's good to see you all. So we do want to start with Resolution 291. This is a resolution that would have a complement change or a change to the Health Department staffing complement that would impact our family programs, specifically our home visiting programs. So I'm sorry, somebody, okay. So what we're proposing to do is to change our current family programs supervisor position to a family programs manager position. They would go from being a grade 10 non-union to a grade 12 non-union if that is supported. The reason why I feel we need to make this change and now is the right time. Our department has been on a path for a couple of years now where we're really working to increase the level of services we provide that are trauma informed and really working at underlying prevention by working with families to try to set young families, young children on a trajectory that prevents many health issues as they grow. So we have programs that do that. We have the Nurse Family Partnership Program, which we've had for a significant period of time. We have the MyApp program, which targets and works with teenagers that are parenting. We have the TPIP program, Taking Pride in Prevention, which is a teen pregnancy prevention program. We have a few others where we've really needed to build up our work in this particular area to serve and meet community demand. We have seen even pre-COVID that the demand and need for these services is continuing to increase in our department. And this is an area where we can really provide trauma and resilience informed services that keep ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, in mind, understanding that that is a common root cause of many public health issues. This is primary prevention in the work of public health right here in these program areas. So we currently have a supervisor that is in charge, oversees a couple of those programs. We have a coordinator that oversees our nurse family partnership program, and both that supervisor and the coordinator report up to the deputy health officer currently. What we're proposing with this shift from the supervisor to the manager is that the nurse family partnership and a few other functions under that coordinator would fall under this manager. The current supervisor would then be responsible for setting direction, still retain some of some of her day-to-day responsibilities that she has now, but add a lot more to this. Some other responsibilities that in areas that we need to grow in this area are on some community coalitions we have addressing maternal and infant mortality and the inequities there. So really the direction we're moving as a department, we need more strategic leadership in this area that can come from a manager, and really that strategic direction is beyond the scope of the job responsibilities of the supervisor. We want to elevate that, push in that direction. This is becoming increasingly important in today's world because we know that with a lot of the economic and just social fallout of COVID-19 and a lot of the interventions to try to reduce COVID-19 transmission risk, there has been a big impact on families, and a lot of folks who were already somewhat at risk have become more at risk. At the same time, we have seen other providers in our community that have discontinued some home visiting services, and there is a growing need in our community for expansion of some of those services. If we're able to make this into a manager position, we will be better suited and have more bandwidth as a health department to be able to more fully and adequately operate in that space to meet the needs of our community. By doing it as a person position change like this, the salary increase or change for the person position would be about $6,000 in salary with a little bit extra in fringe. And the budgets of the programs can support these changes. So that's what we're bringing to you today with Resolution 291.
So Nikki, this is a promotion of the supervisor who is in place now.
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Terry, Dave, questions?
I have no questions.
Mr.
Terry?
Chair,
Yes.
I wanted to ask Nikki on this. Nikki, I know that the health department went through strategic planning a couple years back, and I think that this was something that was a part of that strategic goal, if I remember correctly.
Yes, moving in this area and doing this work is definitely part of our strategic plan.
Okay. And Mr. Chair, if I can do a follow-up question.
Sure.
In the resolution, it speaks, maybe it was in the explanation to us, and what you had just shared. Right now, the majority of this is grant funded. How do we support this position if those grant funds are eliminated?
Similar, I mean, we would treat it like any position we have that's grant funding. If we don't have the funding to support a position, we don't have the funding to support the position. I feel fairly confident in this position because it's not funded by one grant. It is weaving together. We probably have 6 or 7 different grants in this area. And the way the supervisor is currently funded, it is a portion of the different programs that is overseen. As we elevate that to a manager that has a broader base and more diverse funding that goes into it, so it is less susceptible to some of those ebbs and flows.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I got just a question. Shelley, same question that I asked Tom. How do you have a feel for how this new manager grade level 12 fits within the proposed salary structure?
Yes, I've looked at that and I feel comfortable that we'll be able to make the transition when and if the salary study is implemented.
You keep saying if and when. Come on. Confidence. Okay, good answer, Shelley. I appreciate it. Okay. Terry, Dave, concerns, or are you in support of this resolution?
I'm supporting it.
Terry?
With my questions answered and knowing that Shelley has had a chance to review this position and feels confident if and when the salary study is implemented, we can move forward with it.
Great. That's a unanimous support for Resolution 291.
All right, thank you. Shall I move us to resolution 302?
Yep.
Sure.
So this is a resolution to accept some additional funding. So this is an amendment to our fiscal year 2020 contract from the state. And there is an amendment that reflects some additional funding primarily related to COVID. We have been awarded $322,000 in the what's called the Epi and Lab Capacity Contact Tracing Coordination. There's a lot of other things in that besides contact tracing, but that's $322,000, an additional $20,000 for similar types of infection prevention activities related to COVID-19. And then there are some other things that are a bit more typical for this time of year for our amendments in our comprehensive agreement, but it's $148,000 for public health emergency preparedness. That program runs on the federal fiscal year. So starting July 1, it's new funding. So they give us some funding July 1 and then it goes over. So that's some of that. And then there's also some additional funding that has become available from Nurse Family Partnership from the state. The state is passing down some of the savings that they've had because of not doing certain activities at the state level due to COVID response. So some of that money is being passed down to locals, and this is an example of that.
That's nice.
So, yeah, that is good. We're hopeful that we can try to spend it in the allotted time.
Spend it fast. They'll ask for it back.
Yeah, so this amendment represents about $525,000 in additional funding to our health department. Again, with the majority of it being with COVID-19 response. With that $340,000 that I talked about, that was about for COVID, that is has been earmarked in our planning to be able to use to bring on some additional staff. Quite frankly, our health department staff is pretty tapped out, and I'm definitely monitoring our team for burnout, but we have been slogging through a 5-month marathon, and we've got many more months to go to make sure that we're continuing to take measures. And as the response continues to evolve and become more nuanced and providing leadership in more detailed areas, we do need additional people doing some of that work. So I need to work through with Shelley and Brian and here on our staff how much of that might be full-time positions that we may ask for versus temp sub, depending on the length of our need in those functions. But I do want to let the committee know that we are thinking about, and part of our spending will be on additional staff resources to be able to complete these activities.
Okay, that's a good heads up. Thank you. Dave, questions?
No, I have no questions. I'm good.
Terry had to step away for a minute, Bill, so she's not there. She had to step away.
Okay. Well, we never want to turn down a resolution when we're accepting $500,000, I would say.
One of my rules.
So, of those members of the committee that are present, we, I think, fully endorse this resolution.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to move us to resolution 303. And this is the initial comprehensive agreement for fiscal year 2021. So it's the initial contract amount is $3,333,779. This is our comprehensive agreement from the state that has funding for a variety of programs, including emergency preparedness, children's special health care services, many of our clinic services. This is our big agreement where a bulk of our funding comes. There's usually 5 or 6 amendments throughout the year. So that number from that 3.3 million will be added to throughout the year, but this is to accept this base agreement of funding.
Are there any areas that have been cut? How does this stack up against what we've been getting?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing about the state process, and I wish I had more detail. Sometimes in what appears to have happened this year as well, sometimes in an attempt to get the contracting process started quickly, they copy and paste last year's budget when they don't know what it's going to be. So there are a couple of programs that we've received notification that there will be reductions of award, but they're still showing up in last year's amount in our comprehensive agreement. So I suspect that by September, we'll probably have the first amendment and we'll be a bit clearer as to what impact this will really have. At this point, this is more, we need to get the contracting process started so that we can have that clearer picture. And the state is still working through what they're getting from the Fed. So at this point, nobody really knows.
Right. Back to government stuff. Jerry, do you have any questions on this?
There we go. I'm unmuted. I apologize. I had to step away. I had, unknown to me, tree trimmers that stopped out here at the farm. This is pretty standard what we do on an annual basis with this agreement. And I know that we have a number of amendments that come through just because we never quite know what the mark is for funding from the state level. And so I'm comfortable moving this forward to the full board for consideration.
Okay, great. Thank you. Dave?
I am as well.
Yep. I think my only comment on this kind of thing is it's too bad that people like Nikki and her team have to be up and down and back and forth over a long period of time just to figure out what kind of services they can meet. But it's the way things work. So I think you have unanimous support for this resolution as well, Nikki.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate support from all of you.
All right. Everything else going pretty well?
It's going well. This is, we're definitely spending a lot of time with our schools right now, making sure that they are ready and we've got all the questions answered. And there's still a lot of things we're trying to find our way with and make sure that there's consistency across our region and within the state. And so it's definitely a big task. It's a very important task. So we're definitely devoting a lot of time to that.
To that point, Nikki, and I don't want to prejudge the issues or anything. At some point where there's more clarity about schools and what's going to happen and superintendents are all together on what, the planning, I think that will make a very important presentation to the Board of Commissioners as your public relations platform to let our community know that, yes, the health department's been partner to this and we believe this and this is why it's important, et cetera. But I don't want you to have to jump on that until things are a lot more solidified than they are now. But you're our spokesperson on all this stuff and kind of the face of Berrien County. So it's a good thing to hear your voice when the time comes.
Yeah, we can absolutely plan to add that as part of our communication strategy and put some more effort to that maybe in mid to late August.
Great.
Thank you.
Excellent. Very good. Dave, Terry, any other questions for Nikki?
No. Great job. Keep going, Nick.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
No,
Thanks,
no other
Nikki.
questions.
Give our best to the whole team.
Thank you.
All right. Brian, you got anything else you want us to do?
Minutes.
What's that?
The minutes.
Yeah, we've got the meeting minutes.
From what was that? Some back in 2018 or something?
I remember
Pretty
those
much.
1800s. Yeah, I'd make a motion. We approve those.
I would support.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh, wait, we have to do roll.
Roll call. Oh,
Roll call, please.
Chickering,
yes.
Walrath,
Yes.
Freeling.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, you have 3 yeas.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else?
I'm gonna check the public comments.
While you're doing that, Shelley, you're the boss. We really appreciate all your guidance on this stuff, even though we have to push back every now and then. You've always got all the right answers.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
this is Commissioner Freeling. Are these resolutions that are coming out of committee for tomorrow for
Yeah.
the consideration of the full board?
Yes.
Does that follow what our policy is?
Oh, yeah, that policy thing. Geez, I don't know. What do you guys think, Brian?
I see Annette, somewhat
I
animated,
see
so.
that.
Sometimes it's good to have a napkin.
Post-COVID policy.
So
I did
yeah,
see your
you
hand
have-
go up a bit.
You have a policy, however, since COVID has hit and our whole meeting arrangements have been disrupted, I was just kind of chatting with Commissioner Curran, who's still on with us here, about that same thing.
Okay,
Not knowing when meetings are gonna happen and not having the opportunity to get everybody together, no, that process has not been, has not been going as planned, which would normally be that a week would go to committee and then the next week would go to the full board for action. I guess we can have a conversation about that if that's not how we want to continue to do this.
No.
Mr. Chair, there is no meeting the last week of July. My advice is this stuff has been backed up for at least a couple of months. I think it makes sense to advance to tomorrow's agenda with the understanding that our intent is to re-engage all of the committees on a going forward basis just to avoid some of the quote unquote logjam.
I think that is wise counsel. Are you okay with that, Terry?
yes. I just wanted some clarity on that. And I know that it's been some time since this committee has had an opportunity to meet. I'm appreciative that we've been able to do this, even if it is virtually. And I think now that we see things sort of stabilizing to some degree, it's time for us to get back to, applying the process so that things stay clear of how we proceed.
I don't think anybody would disagree with that, and that was very well said.
Thank you.
All right, Annette, any public comment?
I have asked 3 times. It doesn't appear as though you have any public comments.
Gee, I'm surprised. So I think we're at a point where we should adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you all, you professionals there at the Ad Center, at the
No one's sleeping, but it says bye.